If this looks cryptic to you, don't worry. By the end of the video, you will be able to understand what comprises an EDI document. Subscribe now to not miss any more short tech videos like this one. Let's go. In the EDI language, a single business document, such as a purchase order, is called a transaction set or message. A transaction set is comprised of data elements, segments, and so-called envelopes, which are all formatted based on rules of an EDI standard. Let's start with data elements. The data elements are the individual items of information within the transaction set. For instance, in a purchase order, you will find data elements like city, country, quantity, and price. Each data element in a transaction set is defined in the EDI standard by the type of data it represents. The data element definition will describe the name of the element, the description of the element, the data type, so whether it's numeric, alphanumeric, or date, the minimum and maximum length, and the element type, which is either fixed length, so a specific number of characters, or variable length, with no fixed number of characters. A data element separator is placed before each data element in a segment. It marks the beginning of a data element, so that the EDI translator knows where one variable length data element ends and another begins. Data element separators must be defined in the EDI data format. When defining a data element separator, we should select a character that is not likely to appear in the data. This will prevent translation errors that might occur during processing. Common data element separators are the plus sign used by EDIFACT as displayed here, but also the asterisk used by the ANSI X12 standard. Like data elements are grouped as so-called segments. If you are filling out information on a purchase order, you would expect to see groups of related data such as buyer information, information to identify the purchase order, the item details, and a summary of your purchase. In an EDI document, each section is described by a particular segment. On the left-hand side, you can see the typical purchase order output from before. For instance, in the ANSI standard, this purchase order would be translated to the following output. The first row indicates the start of the transaction. Then the beginning of the purchase order is indicated, following a segment for the buyer information and a segment for the item details, as well as one for the summary of our data. Last but not least, there's a segment to indicate the end of the purchase order. For each type of business document, the EDI standard documentation defines the segments that may be included and which ones are mandatory, optional, and/or conditional. For each segment, there are elements that may be included. These elements are defined in the standard dictionary. Furthermore, the required sequence of segments and elements is defined, and how many times a segment may be repeated. Now that all these segments are collected into a prescribed sequence, they form a complete transaction set. Next, the transaction set must be put in envelopes in preparation for transmission to your business partners. EDI documents are exchanged using several envelopes, meaning that each transaction set is placed in an individual envelope. A group of transaction sets, for instance a group of purchase orders, is placed in a group envelope, which is mandatory in ANSI and optional in the EDIFACT standard. And all group envelopes that are going to be sent from one sender to one receiver are comprised in an interchange envelope. An envelope is formed by a pair of segments that define the beginning and the end of the appropriate section. Using the EDIFACT standard as an example, the transaction set envelope uses the UNH and UNT segments, the group envelope uses the UNG and UNE segments, and the interchange envelope uses the UNA, UNB, and UNZ segments. Let's summarize what you've learned today. Each EDI standard documentation includes data elements, which are defined in standard dictionaries that can deviate per EDI standard. Those data elements are stored in segments, so it needs to be defined which segments may be included in the document, as well as the required sequence of segments and elements, and how many times a segment may be repeated. Now, once all these segments are collected into a prescribed sequence, they form a complete transaction set. Next, the transaction set must be put in envelopes in preparation for transmission to your business partners. Thanks for watching this video till the end. If you like this content, please subscribe to my channel to not miss any more tech-related videos.